Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to ALR and welcome back to another ACC qualifying lap breakdown by yours truly, NLR Sick Boy. Now already we're on to round 3 of the ACC Championship here at Indianapolis, and we have got another insane quali lap breakdown for you. Now in the background you have the video playing, but I am going to restart and show you with sound and go through each of the corners between these two drivers. But as a quick introduction, we have the drivers who are now P1 and 2 in the championship. We have David Weatherston on the left and Sam Glover on the right. Obviously David using the Porsche 992. He ends up getting pole position here at Indianapolis, and Sam Glover, his rival in the Ferrari 296, qualifies alongside him on the front row in P2. And as you can see at the bottom, 0.2 of a second separate the two drivers, so quite a big substantial gap between the top two for what we've seen so far in the ACC Championship. Don't mind the fact that the video's just paused. We will get to this breakdown later on. But I just quickly want to say, yeah, quite a large gap between the top two drivers, because last week we covered P3 and P4. They actually set identical lap times, and then round 1, round Spa-Francorchamps, that was actually between P1 and P2, and I think the gap was about 1.5 tenths. So this is the longest gap between any of the top 4 drivers so far recorded. So we're going to jump right into the qualifying lap breakdown, and hopefully I can give you guys a few tips for your next ACC race. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go, the qualifying breakdown. As both drivers exit from the final corner, I'm already going to make a pause, and I understand that you see the YouTube overlay in the background. I do apologise for that. I believe next week we're going to make a fix for this. But really quickly, let's jump right in. So the final corner is where I actually want to start, because it appears to me like Weatherston could have gone faster around the final corner and onto the main straight. I know that he was the driver who poled it, but I'm still going to talk about some of the errors and limitations that even our pole position drivers make. As you can see, seems like he's got a lot more grip around the final corner than Glover, and it looks like Glover made the perfect entry onto the home straight for his car. Already though, I'm going to pause, because look at the massive top speed difference in the Porsche. Now I have it noted down that 130 miles an hour is where the difference, as you can see right here, the difference between the two drivers' speed really begins. But it's at 150 mph, where there's a huge difference of 2 to 3 miles per hour. And I believe that is where, ladies and gents, Weatherston ended up actually poling it by over 0.2. It's the speed down the main straight. Now right here, I have noted that Glover fails to hit both right-hand apexes. Right here, look, he's struggling to glue himself to the inside apex, and right here, completely fails to hit the inside curb. Now I just want to play this next clip, which is the next corner, turn 6 within sector 1. And I'm just going to play it, and I want to see whether you can notice the difference between the two drivers. And what it was is that the Porsche took a slower line. The Porsche on the left, Weatherston, is a lot slower. You can see the mile per hour difference. Remember, this Porsche is a faster car, but it's travelling slower on the straights than the Ferrari. Weatherston goes slower around the former turn, is able to lift off the throttle, position himself on the right hand side of the circuit heading into turn 6 and take a wide line, and that means that he is able to put full throttle down for turn 7 and take a much better run right down the back straight of sector 2. Meanwhile, the Ferrari on the right here, Glover, he's pretty much flat out. I know that it says that he lifts, but regardless, he's got much less mid-corner rotation around this corner right here. As I quickly slow it down, much less mid-corner rotation. He's on the far left inside line into this 90-degree turn 6. And what it means is he's not able to glue himself to the apex. Look, he's now drifting wide halfway through the corner. You shouldn't be that wide through the corner. And also, massive difference in the speed of the two drivers. And what that ultimately means is when we get into this little right-hand kink, turn 8, you'll notice that already Glover, in fact, the sector timings is a perfect time to show this. Glover already completely on the brakes, whereas Weatherston only has to tap the brakes in the slightest degree in order to rotate the car around turn 8. And what that ultimately means is, well, look at the speed difference on the exit, 2 miles an hour already, and it only grows down this sector 2 back straight. Now, I know that it took a while to get through that area, but I highlighted it as probably the most important difference between these two drivers on this quali lap. Now, just focusing on this second tight section in Sector 2, I want to talk about the same thing that I just mentioned earlier, which is about positioning your car on the outside of a next turn, going slow in the former turn to get a better exit in the next turn. I want to see what just happened there between the Porsche and the Ferrari. I'm not sure whether you caught it, but let's watch this. So what happens is that Glover in the Ferrari on the right, he's obviously been listening to my commentary because he does exactly what I critiqued him for not doing earlier. And he ends up positioning himself on the left-hand side of the next turn, but he ends up doing so aggressively that he fails to be straight and streamlined for the next corner. Now, I'm quickly going to play this section in half speed for you. What you're going to see is Glover in the Ferrari very aggressively turns his car to the left of turn 11 in order to have a very smooth line through turn 12. But what ends up happening, I'm just going to wait for this to play. What ends up happening here is that whilst Weatherstone is less aggressive, now obviously he's going slow through turn 10, as you can see he's at half throttle, ready to position his car in a good way at the outside of the corner for a really good run through turn 12. What Glover ends up doing is he's not positioned in a straight fashion into turn 12. So what happens is he ends up having to effectively turn an extra 15 or 20 degrees of the car. As you can see here, right there, on the right, he's braking, but rather than what you normally do is brake straight, or even at the very least you brake towards the apex. He's actually braking away from the apex. He's braking away from the apex in this direction, very slightly, only about 5 degrees, and what that means is he has to brake so much more for turn 12. Look at the speed difference right there, 68, and a moment ago I believe the Porsche was running at about 74, 75 miles an hour there. So at the apex Glover's sitting about 67, and Weatherstone is just going to pick up the speed a hell of a lot quicker all the way down the Sector 3 back straight, just before we go on to the final twisty section of the track. And that's the big difference right there. I believe that the gap was about 70 milliseconds at Sector 1, and now it's 147 milliseconds. So big gap right there, and it seems like Glover ends up missing out by about 70 milliseconds per sector. Now, just quickly going on to the final sector, Sector 3, and it's only about 3 or 4 corners, and in all honesty, both of the cars are pretty much identical through here. And I really did try and analyse. I know that Glover ends up losing 70 milliseconds in this sector, but I've been looking at this for hours, and I just cannot find any difference between the two drivers, apart from the fact that, of course, crossing the line, Weatherstone in the Porsche is travelling faster than Glover, and I don't want to chalk it up to just Weatherstone having the faster car with the Porsche. However, it seems like that might actually be the case, since we've commentated 3 qualifying laps now, and every single time the Porsche seems to have just better top speed, better acceleration out of corners as well. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, Weatherstone ends up poling it by 0.2 of a second over Sam Glover in the Ferrari, and it's once again a victorious qualifying session by Team Porsche. Now, just as some final last minute notes, Weatherstone obviously ends up poling it, like I said. He ends up actually dropping down to P3 during the race, whereas Glover from P2 ends up winning round 3 Indianapolis, and that means that Glover is currently P1 in the standings, and Weatherstone P2 despite his great qualifying. And once again, this is a trend that we've been seeing over these past 3 rounds. The Porsche is just killing it in qualifying, but then in the race they always seem to drop down a few positions here and there. It's the Ferrari that gains big points overall, so perhaps this is a problem with the Porsche that we're going to be seeing later on in the season. A lack of race potential, I'm not sure, but as you can see the video playing in the background. That's pretty much all of my notes on this qualifying breakdown, ladies and gents. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, tonight will be another round of the ACC Championship. This time round 4 around Zandvoort. I cannot wait to break down another qualifying lap next week, and I hope to see you guys again soon.